back vibe, baby.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe, and I'm really excited about my guest today. Want to introduce you to David W. David was born in 1956 and grew up in Tennessee as the eldest of four boys. He was actually raised in an atheist home by brilliant but skeptical parents. Good Lord, say that 3 times, Joe. From his first drink at 13, alcohol became his escape, fueling both his talent as a trumpet player and his struggle to fit in. He became a daily drinker at 17 while attending Juilliard, later pursuing careers in law and relationships that were both overshadowed by addiction. For 37 years, David drank every day, functioning professionally but unraveling personally. It wasn't until an intervention on May 3rd, 2010, that he finally surrendered. Nearly 15 years later, David has found sobriety, faith, and transformation through the 12 steps. Today, he shares his journey of overcoming addiction, discovering a higher power, and the life-changing power of the 9th step. So grab a cup of coffee, relax, and let's get into it. David, how are you doing today?
I'm just fine today, thanks. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing great, and I'm really grateful that you came on the show to share your experience, strength, and hope. I guess let's start from the beginning. What was your childhood like growing up as the oldest of 4 boys?
Well, there's a lot of mental illness in my family, and my father had bipolar disorder before it was diagnosable as that. I think they called it manic depression at the time. He had his first psychotic break when I was about 12 years old, and
Wow.
very frightening time. A lot of violence, a lot of dysfunction. My mother was very emotionally distant, and so I never felt that I was raised right, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
I had, jumping ahead, I had some years of therapy, and I don't believe I gave the therapists much of a chance because I was drinking through all those years. But I honestly don't remember them ever mentioning forgiveness. And it wasn't until late middle age or early old age, I don't know where the line is, but it wasn't until
I don't either.
My recovery journey began at 53, sometime later when I began to find forgiveness and stop blaming my parents for the way I was treated as a child. Other than that, the most significant thing was I was bullied. I was a weakling. I was skinny. I felt ugly. I had a bad case of acne. I just did not feel attractive. In puberty, I didn't feel attractive to the girls, and I felt terrible about that. And so I certainly don't have a story that involves severe abuse, no sexual abuse that many people have, and so there are a lot of worse backgrounds than mine. And I've learned that I can't attribute my alcoholism to my upbringing.
Right.
That's not the reason I became alcoholic.
Yeah. And you mentioned your parents, and I know that, and you said one of the things you had mentioned is that you were raised as an atheist, or raised in an atheist home. What was that like?
Well, when you're raised that way, it's just all you know. And so learned all of the rationalist arguments against the existence of God, and I could recite them quite fluidly. And I was absolutely persuaded that people of faith were wrong. My father taught me that people of faith were weak and they needed a crutch. They couldn't make it on their own. And for years in early recovery, I thought how wrong that message was. After I began to find a higher power, I thought how wrong the message was from my father. It turns out that the message was correct. It was the value that he assigned to the message that was wrong. In other words, he taught me that people of faith are weak. We teach ourselves that we are weak, that we need the help of a higher power. It's just that he assigned a terrible value to that. It was a bad thing to be weak. And we assign a wonderful value to that it's a great thing to be weak. And so it took me a while in my journey to appreciate what was right and what was wrong about my father's teaching.
It's interesting. You bring such a unique perspective in that way. I'm sure, and one of the things you talked about was struggling as a teenager and not feeling like you fit in. And me and you both started drinking at 13. That must be like the unlucky number. I don't know what it is, but how did alcohol play a role in helping you navigate that being uncomfortable as a teenager?
Well, I remember the first time I got drunk at 13 and threw up seemingly endlessly in the commode and just couldn't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
So many people have that same experience. There's nothing unique about that, but it's irrational and it's impossible for normal people to understand. Normal people, if they get sick on alcohol, they don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
And they may do it again, but they don't want to. And I just couldn't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
So,
do you remember how it made you feel, David?
Yeah, all the worries, all the insecurities left. And there was a sense of peace, the same sense of peace that I can get today out of working the 12 steps. It's just that alcohol was quicker. It happened.
Yeah.
It gave you relief instantly, whereas the 12 steps take a little while.
That makes a lot of sense. You were kind of a child prodigy as well, weren't you, as a trumpet player?
I thought I was hot shit. Can I use language like that?
Absolutely. It is preferred. No, I'm just kidding, people.
So back in the day, they had junior high instead of middle school, and so our high school was only 3 years. We had the ninth grade was in junior high school. So when I switched over to the high school in the 10th grade, I immediately won first chair in the local band, but I also won the statewide all-state trumpet competition and was principal trumpet in the statewide all-state band. So, and orchestra, I think, as I recall. And so as I excelled at that across the state, I got this tremendous ego. It was the only thing in the world that I felt I could do really, really well. And it may have kept me sane during those years of being frightened and afraid and insecure in every other area of my life. But what was very helpful to me to have that one thing that I could do really, really well. So go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Well, that one thing that was really, really good in my life became a problem when I moved to New York. Kind of a long story short, I got into Juilliard and quickly learned that I could not compete on a national or international level. The level of talent outside of Tennessee was so much ahead of me, and the disappointment the years of struggle, beating my head against the wall, trying, struggling hard, and putting off the decision to leave music was very, very painful. Very difficult.
And did drinking kind of help alleviate some of that?
My college roommate at the time said, "David, why do you drink every night? Why do you drink every day?" And I said, "I like it. Why wouldn't I?" And, I don't think I was drinking excessively in my college years. 2, 3, 4 glasses of scotch, which sounds excessive when you put it that way, but on standards of where I was led to later in my addiction, that was nothing.
Yeah.
And so I never missed a day of school or work or anything like that. I was functioning. That's a funny story if we can jump ahead.
Yeah.
When I got to treatment in 2010, they wanted me to say I was an alcoholic, and I didn't want to do that. I was not fully voluntary. There was a lot of pressure on me to go to treatment. And although I signed myself in, it was under duress.
Right.
And so I didn't want to admit I was alcoholic. I felt like once those words left my lips, there'd be no taking it back. And but finally, under the pressure of the counselors and the other members of the treatment groups, finally I started saying I'm a functioning alcoholic. Because even at 53, when I came into treatment, I still had a job. I'm an attorney. I had a professional career. I had a nice house with 2 cars in the garage. The bills were paid, and I had two kids and a wife still. And so I felt I was functioning, and none of the counselors liked that. They didn't like me to attach that label, and so finally, in frustration, I persuaded one of them to explain to me why they didn't like that label. And he said, "David," he said, "it's just like being a little bit pregnant." He said, "You either are or you're not."
Yeah.
And more seriously, he explained that if you use words like functioning, what you're really saying is, I'm not that bad. What you're saying is, I'm really not powerless over alcohol. I'm functioning. It's
Right.
It's a way of minimizing it and not accepting that first step of admitting we're powerlessness. Admitting we're powerless. So
that's a great way to put it. Like, I haven't quite heard it put that way. I always think of, when I tell people I'm from a dysfunctional family, and I'm like, I have yet to meet someone who's really in a functional family. We all have some sort of dysfunction. So I kind of say, think the same when I thought I was a functioning alcoholic, and literally I was destroying everything in my path, but I felt okay. So I figured I was okay, Did you have, were there signs throughout that things weren't okay, throughout your career, even though I know you thought yourself as functioning? Were there any moments that?
Late in the drinking part of my career, I kept a bottle of scotch at work, and when I knew I wouldn't have any clients coming in, after about 3 o'clock, I'd start drinking. I could work on briefs or do legal research, and without being impaired.
Right.
I had developed a tremendous tolerance for alcohol, and nobody criticized my work, but my boss could smell the scotch from down the hall, and he didn't like that idea very much.
Yeah.
And so he was firm in demanding that I stop, and I refused for a period of time. And I think that's one of the things that led up to the intervention. Is my then wife got him involved, and he was a big part of the pressure that got me into treatment.
Yeah. And that you mentioned your wife at the time. So how did alcohol influence like your relationship and decision making? How did that come about?
Well, she was my second wife, actually. The first wife I married at 20 years old, roughly, and divorced at 27 or 28, or she divorced me, I should say. But the second wife, mother of my children, I don't regret anything today because I have two wonderful kids that I wouldn't have otherwise. But with that exception, I never should have married her. She never should have married me. She was a very religious person. We didn't agree politically. We didn't agree spiritually or religiously, and we had not physically violent, but emotionally violent fights. We lived together for about 2 years before we got married, and argued and fought and disrespected each other terribly, to the point that at one occasion she pulled a gun on me, and I married her after that. So the drinking, I think, destroyed my judgment, destroyed my judgment. I was not a binge drinker at all. I was purely a daily drinker. I did get drunk occasionally where I overshot the mark, but my tolerance grew to the point that by the time I went to treatment, I was drinking every single day, 15 or so drinks, usually after work or starting around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By noon, I'd be looking at my watch, just counting the hours until I could get my first drink. And I was pretty much in control of my drinking. I drank that amount, and I'd go to bed at a reasonable hour. I'd go to bed around 10 o'clock and wake up in the morning. I didn't feel like I had hangovers. I had just developed this tolerance. Now, I didn't feel good, but I just thought I felt normal. And so then on the weekends of 15 drinks a night, on a work night, on the weekends or holidays, I'd start drinking in the mornings. And it's hard to estimate, probably 30 drinks in the course of the day, just drink all day long. But I never got up and drank in the middle of the night. I'm sure that would have happened. That would have come. I was on that progressive scale. I'm sure that would have happened. I never drank in the morning except those drinks that are made for mornings on a weekend or holiday. If they make a drink for the mornings, what could be wrong with taking one, right? And so I did.
Yeah.
I would have to drink to do anything other than work. I would drink before I went to my son's daycare at Methodist Church to watch a school play. I would drink before I'd go to my daughter's cello concert at the middle school. I told myself that nobody knew. I'd drink a clear, odorless liquid and tell myself that nobody knew. Now, you won't be able to see on the podcast my face, but I had a terrible case of rosacea from drinking alcohol. My face was bright red, and when I put the first drink of the day in my body, it turned bright red. My ears flushed, my nose, and the top of my cheeks. And it's still to this day my normal state is somewhat red. It's much improved from where it was.
Sure.
But at the time, here I am with beet red face, telling myself that nobody knows I've been drinking, and I would go to the dermatologist, and I said, "What's causing this?" And the dermatologist told me that, well, it could be alcohol, it could be genetic. And I said, that's it. My grandmother had red cheeks. Of course, she put little rouge powder on it, to make them red. But that was just the lie I told myself to.
Yeah. It's amazing. We look at the two options. It's like, if it's anything but alcohol, it's definitely not the alcohol.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you think, I guess you're sick, you were very successful. And so you think that was also a hindrance to you, coming to terms or with being an alcoholic?
Absolutely. I tell people that I never got the gift of desperation. I never felt that alcohol had beat me down to the point that I was desperate and willing to do anything to get sober and stay sober. Never felt that way. I never wanted to quit. I went into treatment to get all those people off my back, and that's the truth. I didn't want to. I looked forward the whole time I was in treatment. I looked forward to getting out so that I could go back to drinking. I told myself that everybody was blaming their problems on my drinking. It wasn't fair. They were wrong. It was the whole world was against me, and I was not going to give up my right to drink alcohol. It was my possession, and it was the most important possession that I had.
Yeah, and that's up until you went through an intervention, and I thought it was pretty interesting.
That was through the intervention and the period of time that I was in treatment. I still had that terrible attitude.
Yeah,
I didn't believe in God. Still, I thought that all religious people were hypocrites, and there are certainly examples of that.
Sure.
That aren't hard to find. So I felt justified in my belief, and when I looked at the steps that they introduced me to in the treatment center and in AA meetings, that they put us on the druggy buggy and drove us to AA meetings. And when I looked at the 12 steps on the wall, half of them dealt with a higher power or God. And I was just absolutely convinced that wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
Couldn't possibly work for me. But what happened was I had this terrible relationship by that point with my wife. And she came to counseling sessions at the treatment center and would scream at me and yell at me and took her wedding ring off and threw it at me. And I was just that night, particularly that night, I could not understand why she would do that. After all, I'm doing what she wanted me to do. She hired the interventionist. And I was doing exactly what she wanted me to do. And here she was, enraged at me. And all of a sudden, this light bulb went off. And I came to believe that she got me into treatment knowing I would fail, planning to divorce me and take advantage of me in a divorce, because I'd be the drunk that had failed at treatment, the drunk that had relapsed, and everybody knew that I had driven drunk with the kids in the car. I'd lose my children. I'd lose everything in the divorce. And I came to believe in that instant, that night, that she never wanted me to recover. She had no belief that I was going to recover. It was checkmate. We were playing chess, and she just won.
Yeah.
And I was so upset. I was devastated. But I'm a very stubborn person, incredibly stubborn. And I was stubborn enough not to let her win not to take a drink when I got out of treatment. I woke up that first morning home from treatment, having looked forward to this day because I'm going to get to go back to drinking. And instead I said, I don't want to let her win. I'll be damned if I'll take a drink. And 30 or 60 days by that point of being abstinent from alcohol had taken away all the physical problems, the physical withdrawals. And so all I was left with was this emotional obsession for drinking. And I had such strong willpower I could fight against it. It was torture. It was a terrible way to live. And we lived that way together for 4 months before she filed for divorce. And I knew it. It just proved I was right all along. This evil woman had planned to take advantage of me. And here she was filing for divorce anyway, even though I'm doing everything she wants me to do. Now, having worked the 12 steps, I can look back at that. It was a summer that we spent living together after treatment. And I can look back at that time and realize I hated her because she was the only thing standing in my way of drinking. Can you imagine how I treated her? Can you imagine how badly I must have treated her?
Yeah.
I must have talked to her terribly and treated her very, very badly. And so today, I don't blame her for filing for divorce. I wonder how she managed to give it 4 months. I mean, it just, the ability now to empathize with another person, to understand the harms that I've caused and the difficulties that I've caused other people it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
I don't have to be defensive anymore. I don't have to prove that I'm right, you're wrong, or she's wrong. I don't have to do that anymore. It's freeing. It's liberating.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. I was just thinking that, and we say we came to believe in a power greater than ourselves, and your anger towards your wife or your ex-wife was really a power greater than yourself.
It sure was.
Moment.
It sure was. It sure was. So she filed for divorce. I still didn't believe in God, didn't want to. You couldn't tell me anything about it. I was going to 3, I think my aftercare plan required me to go to 3 or 4 meetings a week. I was miserable doing it, but I dreaded it. But I got a sheet of paper signed in the basket at each of those meetings just so I could prove when she files for divorce that I'm in compliance with my aftercare plan. I was organized. I was preparing for this. And but when she filed for divorce, and I'll say she didn't do it in a nice way. Now, I'd hurt her a lot, so she had reason to want to retaliate and hurt me back. But she could have told me, David, this isn't working. I'm going to go talk to a lawyer. She could have told me, David, I've talked to a lawyer. I'm going to file for divorce. She could have told me, David, I have filed for divorce. Here's the paperwork. Will you waive the service of process? No, her lawyer hired the sheriff's department to serve me at work. And I got a call from the receptionist that, David, there's a sheriff's deputy out here to see you. What the hell, what's this about? And so the minute I got back to my office, shut the door and opened these papers and read it, I was just shaking in anger. I was so enraged. And I instantly planned a relapse. Instantly. I had a business trip coming up to Vero Beach, Florida to take some expert witness depositions in a lawsuit 3 weeks away. And I instantly knew when I get down to Florida, I'm going to get drunk. Not have a drink, get drunk. And I had the craziest thoughts. I mean, I was so sick. I had the thought that when I get down to Florida, I'm going to make up for all the drinks I've missed in 4 months. Now, this is just a 3-day trip, but alcohol was so important to me, and it had been taken from me, and I was going to get it all back. It belonged to me, and I was going to take it all back. It just didn't occur to me that I'd die of alcohol poisoning, before I begun on this plan, But
Yeah.
but I love thinking and remembering now how sick I was. And the funny thing about that was, when at my sickest, I would not have admitted that I was ill. I would have told you I'm fine. It's everybody else. And I was honest in saying that. I
Yeah.
believed that. I didn't think I was sick. I didn't appreciate how ill I was. Uh, it's 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 an amazing disease in that respect. If you got cancer, you know it. Once they tell you you got cancer, you got cancer.
Yeah.
But once they tell you got addiction, you don't always know you got addiction. I didn't.
Yeah.
So I got down to Florida, and I remember checking into the hotel, and the clerk told me, uh, come to the bar at 6 o'clock, and we've got free mojitos for an hour from 6 to 7. And I'm a cheap drunk, and I had money to buy drinks, but the thought of free alcohol, just there's something different about it. And so I actually waited about 15 or 20 minutes more to get down to the bar for the free drinks. And I walked in that bar, and it was like Bill Wilson describes in his story in the Big Book, the co-founder of AA, describes being outside of a bar in a hotel in Akron, Ohio, and he could hear the gaiety, the tinkling of the glasses and the ice cubes. And it was just like that when I walked in. It was so delightful, and I was so excited. It was like being reunited with a lost lover that I
Mm.
had missed so bad, and I just could not wait to get my first drinks in me. And I walked straight up to the bartender and sat down at the bar, and I was just about to speak my order when this screaming in my head, you know what I mean? The committee,
Mm-hmm.
debate, should I do it? Should I not do it? Just started raging. And I had never had this experience before. Always pretty emotionally controlled, to a fault. People have told me all my life, David, show some emotion, and I would never felt free to show emotion. But all of a sudden, this raging debate in my head, uh, part of me was screaming, if you do this, you're going to lose your kids in that divorce.
Mm.
If you do this, you can't conceal it. See, I had been thinking I didn't have to tell anybody. I'd just conceal it. When I got home, I wouldn't tell anybody. And this screaming voice was saying, you can't conceal this. You're going to love this. If you have that first drink, you're going to love it so much that you're going to be back to daily drinking by the time you get home. And there's no way to conceal that. And it just, with this raging, but I wanted it so badly at the same time. I don't know if you ever had that experience of wanting it and wanting not to do it terribly,
Yeah.
on both sides and equally. And uh, I found myself standing up and walking out of the bar without ordering a drink. And if you think that I felt good about that, like maybe, hey, recovery is working, this is, no, I felt horrible. I
Yeah.
wanted a drink, and it was right there. It was right in front of me. And I wanted it so badly. And I wanted not to do it equally as much. And instead, I got in my rental car. This was before the app, the meeting finder app, and I had to go up to the room and search for meetings on a laptop computer I had brought, and I found a meeting close by, and I got in my rental car and drove to this meeting. It was in a trailer in a bad part of town, uh, and I walked in, and I didn't know anybody. There were about 50 people in the trailer, And for the very first time, I felt at home in an AA meeting. For the very first time, I felt that I belonged. And I had this other thought of how desperately lonely I was, and that I didn't feel lonely in that room because I felt that every one of those strangers there wouldn't be there if they didn't understand what I was going through. It was an amazing feeling. It was so powerful. I'd been to maybe 100 meetings in Knoxville before I left for this trip, and hated them. And all of a sudden, the whole experience was different. And I went to that meeting every night before I returned to Knoxville. Didn't have a drink, and I got back to Knoxville, and I was still just batshit crazy. Just still wanting it as badly as ever, and wanting not to do it as badly as ever. And I was going to a aftercare meetings at the treatment center on Wednesday nights at 6. I went to that aftercare group, and I knew I had to tell this story about what had happened to me. But I was a little ashamed because I had gone to 3 meetings during the 3 weeks leading up to my planned relapse, and I hadn't told them I'm planning to drink. A little ashamed of myself, a bit of dishonesty by omission there. But I knew I had to get some help. I had to get some understanding what was happening to me. I didn't understand it. And so looking down at the floor out of shame, I told them what had happened. And the facilitator, he was a volunteer who came in once a week and led these meetings. And he was a cocaine and opiate addict. But he was very kind, and he chose his words to speak to me, an alcohol addict. And he said, David, how'd you get out of that? Oh, no, he said, David, were you powerless over alcohol when you walked in the bar? Oh, God, yes. I was so powerless. I was compulsively driven to get drunk. No choice. And he said, David, when you say those words of the first step, that you were powerless over alcohol when you entered that bar, does it feel different than when you said those 4 or 5 months earlier in treatment here? So, yeah, it's totally different. It's totally different. I used to think that when I admit I'm powerless, that's something I tell you. And I told them I'm powerless over alcohol. I was obedient enough to say those words. But now, after this experience in Florida, it's in here, it's in my heart. Now the powerlessness is, the word I like is accepted. I've accepted my powerlessness. Absolutely, no question about it after that feeling coming into the bar. It was so different. And then he said, David, let's talk about the second step. And I didn't know the steps well enough to have any idea where he was going with this. He said, how'd you get out of that bar without taking a drink? I don't know, man. You tell me. I don't know. He said, David, he raised his voice a little. David, how'd you get out of that bar without taking a drink? Now, there's 7 or 8 other former patients in this aftercare room. And I don't like to be yelled at for something I already told the man I don't know. And I don't like to be confronted with that in front of other people. And I said back to him with a raised voice to match the level of his, I said, get off my back, man. I told you I don't know. If you're so smart, you tell me how'd I get out of that bar without taking a drink. And the third time he yelled at me. And people are leaning back in their chairs and what the hell? And I yelled back at him, screamed at him, cursed at him. I told you, I don't know. And so all of a sudden, his voice dropped. And today I recognize it as a form of love that we have for one another when we're helping each other through our addiction into recovery. At the time, I didn't understand love in that way at all. But all I could sense was the incredible kindness, the incredible sincerity, the softness, the caring, compassion. And he said, David, don't you see? Don't you get it? He said, a power greater than yourself restored you to sanity. Not entirely, he said, it didn't take it all away. You're still suffering. But a power greater than yourself took away your insanity just enough to get you out of that bar without taking a drink. Now, I'm a smartass, and so I'm already thinking ahead. While he's talking in this gentle, soft voice, I'm already thinking ahead. You mean I don't have to go to church? You mean I don't have to read the Bible or the Quran or the Torah? You mean I don't have to have an image of God as a gray bearded man in the sky? You mean I don't have to be religious? Whatever got me out of that bar is, and just about that time he said, yes. He said, whatever got you out of that bar without taking a drink is more than sufficient for successful recovery in the 12-step program. That higher power, that God is more than sufficient. Latch onto it, grab onto it, don't let go. And I stayed after the meeting and talked to him. And this guy was about as different from me as two people could be. But I was just so moved by what he had done, what he'd shared with me. I asked him to be my sponsor. And he became my sponsor, and we started overworking the steps with this concept, this early concept of a higher power. And I began, at that moment, I began to heal. I mean, it's still a process. But at that moment, I began to want to stay sober for the right reasons. And I began to want to work these steps. And it was mysterious, it was magical, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I owe my certainly my recovery to him. I owe maybe my life to him. I don't know that I would be dead, but I owe the quality of my life today to that man and the message he was able to carry to me in the unique way that I could receive it. Yeah, it was
pretty awesome.
It was awesome.
It's a powerful story. You know, how has your definition of a higher power kind of developed over time?
Well, our big book, our literature says that we should be open to accepting parts of religion that we can accept into our spirituality and not reject them out of prejudice. And I started with a lot of prejudice. So I didn't want to pray. I had never prayed in my life, and I felt like a hypocrite to pray. But finally, this sponsor threatened to fire me if I wouldn't memorize the third step prayer. He said, if you're not willing to memorize 5 simple sentences after what you've seen work already, if you're not willing to try that, then I'm going to spend my time with someone else. Well, he had become my guru. I wasn't about to let him go. And so I spent 4 hours one day. I'm a slow learner when it comes to memorization, but I spent 4 hours memorizing those 5 sentences. And it was a Wednesday, and I'd been out of town taking some depositions. I was driving back into town on the way to the aftercare program that I mentioned earlier. And I got a call from my daughter. She was about 12 years old at the time, and she was crying and she was terrified. And she said, Daddy, can you come over here to the house? She said, I think Mother's had a heart attack. And so I said, of course, honey, I'll be right there. And I said, have you called 911? And she said, yes, they're on the way. So I drove over there, and her mother was lying on the floor. My son was about 6 years old, and the kids are just a wreck. And I got them comforted and went over to Angie and asked if there's anything I could do to help. And about that time, I heard in the driveway a car pulling up. I thought it might be the ambulance, so I went out through the garage, and it turned out it was Angie's mother. And the kids were right behind me in the garage. And when she got out of the car, she started screaming at me. If anything happens to Angie, I'm going to kill you. Now, the old me would have reacted very badly to that. I would have yelled back at her. I would have cursed her. I would have told her to get the hell out of here. I would have done something that would not have contributed positively to this situation. And instead, something came over me. A peace came over me. And I said, Karen, you need to go inside, calm down. The children are frightened. Go inside and attend to your daughter while we wait for the ambulance. And she did, and the situation calmed down. So after the ambulance took Angie off to the ER, I got the kids calmed down and put them to bed. And I was ready to stay until we heard anything. And I got home about 2:00, and it turned out that she'd had a panic attack, and there was nothing serious, although I'm sure it felt like a heart attack. But I went back to my sponsor after that and told him, I've memorized the damn prayer. And then I told him about this experience. And he said, let me get this straight. You said the third step prayer for 4 hours? Yeah. And then you handled a situation under that kind of stress that you would normally have handled very badly, but you handled it well. I said, well, yeah. And he said, and you still think that prayer doesn't work? I said, I wasn't praying. I was just saying the words. He said, you were praying. I said, I was just saying the words, and he argued with me. But I had to recognize that I could see prayer working. And I don't know, it was within a matter of days. I was at an AA meeting, and I heard somebody say, if you haven't tried prayer, if you think prayer doesn't work, you haven't tried it. And that was exactly me. Once I tried it, it's become an important part of my life, and it's changed me. Yeah,
I think that's the purpose too, right? There's a great saying I love that says, prayer may not change the situation, but it will always change me. And I think that's a beautiful way to do it. But something else I wanted to touch on with you while we're in the steps is some of the hardest things are amends. And I know you have some good experience with making amends. So would you mind sharing a little bit some of that maybe?
Yeah. How much time do we have?
We've got time. We've got at least 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. So the first really important amends was to make amends to that ex-wife, Angie. By then, maybe 2 years sober, the divorce was finally finished. We fought over everything that married couples in Tennessee can fight over. 4 mediations, and it was terrible. But that was over, and my sponsor said, David, it's time for you to make amends to her. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, and I was hoping to avoid that. I was hoping to get the exception that it might hurt somebody else, and but I didn't get that pass. It didn't happen. And so he said, look, I don't want you to say I'm sorry. He said, I want you to completely avoid apologizing. He said, what I want you to do instead is prepare for this by meditating on how your behaviors in the marriage affected her. Become aware of precisely how the harm you inflicted felt, and what it was like to be her in a relationship with you. And of course, you're to ignore what she's done to you. And I used to not be able to tell this story without going into all the things she did, but now I can do that. I can ignore that. And I did, and I really thought through. I thought through how I had hurt her. And the biggest thing was that years earlier, before I went to rehab, 5 years before I went to rehab, I'd come home from a business meeting out of town, and she got into my cell phone and discovered that I'd hired an escort service. And it was incredibly embarrassing, incredibly humiliating. And I was so ashamed when I was confronted with this. And this was what she'd been screaming at me about in the treatment center 5 years later. And we'd had marriage counseling where she yelled and screamed about it. And she wanted everybody in the world to know what I had done. She wanted to punish me. And I had to set aside all of that. And I had to think about what it must have been like when she found that out. And so I sat down at the table with her, and before I could get a word out, I started crying. Not Kleenex tears, but paper towel tears, just bawling. And when I finally got it together enough to talk, I said, Angie, I can hardly imagine how it must have affected you to learn of my infidelity, and particularly the type of infidelity, the betrayal, the hurt, the fear of sexually transmitted diseases, the wonder and the worry about, how often, how many times, how long had this been going on, all of those things that I have refused to talk about. And it must have just been torture for you. And just crying through the whole thing. And then when I'd finished with that one, that was the big one, at least I thought, other things began to come to me that I hadn't even thought about in preparing. She had always said, for example, when we'd go to family therapy, she'd say, you talk down to me. You don't value me. And I would say, bullshit, I do not. And I couldn't see that. I couldn't empathize with her. I couldn't put myself in her shoes and feel what it was like to be married to me. But all of a sudden, after talking about the infidelity, oh my God, the way I talked to her, the way I talked to you, Angie, was terrible. How did you suffer through that for all those years? We were married 17 years, together 19 years. And oh my God, and more tears and more tears. And there were some other things that came up, but the important point about the whole thing was she'd never seen me cry. And there's something about tears that give credibility. We don't, I guess some people can cry when they're acting, but not me. I'm not one of those. And so the tears were very powerful. Anyway, I got up to leave, and it was a hot August day, and I sat in the car with the air conditioning on in the driveway, and didn't feel quite myself. Didn't feel like I should be driving. I was so emotional, but it was such an uplifting feeling. The people describe it as a 1,000-pound weight off my shoulders or my chest, and that's exactly what it was. I felt lightheaded, lighthearted and lightheaded. And I went to a meeting that night at the Park 40 Clubhouse, and they do a reading before most of the meetings called the promises, and they're actually the ninth step promises, and it begins, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. And then it has 12 wonderful promises, a new freedom and a new happiness, and I still get shivers down my spine when I think about that phrase, because I was feeling those things at the very moment that it had been predicted in 1939 when the Big Book was written, that they would occur halfway through the ninth step, right after making amends to Angie. And I was feeling this awesome weight lifted off of my chest. So if we got time, I want to jump forward to the second major amends, if you got time for that.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I was maybe 6 months later, maybe a year later. The kids were maybe 13 and 7 by then. I was 2.5 years sober, something like that. And I decided that I was ready to take them to the beach for a week. And we went down there, and we had a good time. The kids seemed to enjoy it. I wouldn't say that there weren't moments I wanted to drink, but they weren't painful moments. I was easily able to stay sober during the week until the very last day. You know, that's the day that you have to clean up the condo and take out the trash and strip the beds and get the car loaded and get on the road for an 8-hour drive back to Knoxville. The kids were too young to share the driving, and always in the past I had driven on a long road trip with a cooler of alcohol in the car, and so the thought was occurring to me of how much more comfortable I'd be driving back if I could just have a few drinks for the road. And I'm in recovery now. I've learned to turn the channel, change the channels on those thoughts. And, I've got tools, and so I'm able to turn that off. My daughter was very grouchy, and she was picking on her little brother, and she was not helpful, and she was sassing to me, and gradually this idea in the back of my head of relapsing was growing. The desire to drink was coming back after 3 years, and it was becoming more and more troublesome, more and more difficult to change the channel and turn it off. Finally got him in the car, and we're driving down the highway, and I'm wanting to drink, and she's just griping. And all of a sudden, my son was sitting right behind me in the back seat, and he started screaming at the top of his lungs. And I looked over beside me, and my daughter had reached over through the console of the car and was pinching the inner meat of his thigh as hard as she could. I swatted her hand away, and just full-blown wanted to get drunk at this point. It was coming back with a vengeance. And I one last thing to try. I took an eggs, but they tell you when kids are misbehaving, take something away that they want. And so I remembered that she wanted to get home that night for a sleepover with some girlfriends. Those 13-year-old girls love their sleepovers, and so I was going to take that away from her. And so I pulled off into a hotel parking area, and I said, "You're not behaving. I'm going to get a hotel room with a swimming pool, and I'm going to relax today. And if you behave, we'll go back tomorrow." And with that, she started screaming at me. And she screamed, "I can't believe you ruined my family by sleeping with a prostitute." 13 years old. The first thing they tell you in the parenting classes for divorcing parents is not to involve your kids in that kind of thing. I had no idea that she knew. I hadn't put her on an amends list because to make amends to her for something she didn't know about would do more harm than good. I got when I feel shame, like that type of shame, I get furious. I just get this rage that comes over me, and I took a deep breath, and I was just about to scream at her something stupid like, "How dare you speak to me that way? I'm your father. Don't you ever talk to me that way again," you know? When instead this sense of peace came over me. And instead of yelling at her, I reached my hand over the console of the car and put it on her shoulder and looked her in the eye, and I said, "Honey, I need to know exactly how I've hurt you. I need to know that. This is a perfect time for you to share that with me." And she leaned over the console of the car and put her head against my chest and started crying. And I leaned over and grabbed her around the shoulders and bent over her and started crying. And she'd never seen me cry either. And we got it together. We got back on the road and we drove all the way back to Knoxville. The day flew. We talked the whole way. I had a vocabulary to speak about my behaviors that I never had before. Out of the big book in the 12 and 12, particularly the 12 and 12 in step 8, where it talks about these instincts in alcoholics that run awry, and one of them is the sex instinct, and that was my particularly embarrassing instinct that ran awry, and it made my amends that much more difficult to want to make. But when we got back to her mother's driveway after that long trip that just flew by, I looked down, and that girl who had screamed these so painful words at me 8 hours earlier was holding my hand, and we were loving each other, and it was unbelievable. And once again, those promises were coming true as exactly in the steps as predicted in 1939 were going to happen for me. It just propelled me into AA. About a month later, she came to me and she said, "David, my friends are going on a field trip to New York City through school, and it's $800, and I'd like to go. Would you pay for that?" I said, "Yes, honey, I'd like to do that for you. Let me know when you need the money." About 2 weeks later, we're having dinner, and she said, "Daddy," she said, "about that trip to New York." And I'm thinking she's ready for a check. And she said, "I'd rather go with you. Will you take me to New York?" And for this alcoholic, for a 13-year-old, maybe she was 14 by then, for a 14-year-old girl to prefer to be with me than her girlfriends, to take a trip with me instead of with her friends, I wouldn't have that if I was drinking. I wouldn't have that without the 12 steps, without recovery, without everything involved in AA. It's transformed my life. It's made my life wonderful and beautiful. If you got a minute, I gotta say, I did have a difficult weekend. I'm going through a hard time. My girlfriend of 4 years announced that she's leaving me, and I was shocked and hurt. And I'm recovering from that. But when these things happen in recovery, for me, I am able to have that joy of sobriety, that joy of recovery. I'm able to maintain a joy even through sorrow and pain.
Yeah.
My father died in 2016, and I had the same experience. A sad time, but it doesn't take away the joy of life and of the of the relationships that I have left. And so, gosh, I love sharing about it, and it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing about it, David, and being so open, and vulnerable, and I'm
Let
sorry
me,
about. Oh, go
let me,
ahead.
yeah, let me talk about that for a minute. Vulnerable. It's important. Uh, our book says that resentments are the number one offender that'll lead us back to a relapse. But if and that's probably true, but number two has got to be shame.
Hmm.
I cannot live under the intense pain of shame and stay sober.
Yeah.
And as importantly, I cannot be helpful or useful to other people if I'm living with the pain, the intense pain of shame. I will isolate. I will stick to myself. I will feel insignificant. I'll feel that I have nothing to share or nothing to be helpful, or I won't want to be helpful because I'm suffering myself so much. Shame is devastating,
Yeah.
and I've got to find a way to get rid of any shame that I'm feeling, or I'm going to get drunk. Eventually, I'm going to have a relapse.
Yeah.
And the 12 steps, I mentioned forgiveness earlier. The 12 steps allow me to forgive myself. And these things that were so painful and so shameful to me, so humiliating and embarrassing, uh, when I came into AA, they haven't changed, but how I feel about them has totally changed.
Yeah.
And I hope you can see that the shame is gone. I
Absolutely.
talk about it openly. There's always somebody, not always, but there's sometimes somebody who says, you should be ashamed of yourself. Well, would you really want me to be ashamed of myself? If the person you would have, if I'm ashamed of myself, would not be a good member, a fit member of society.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, even when we're dealing with our kids. We should never try to shame them.
No.
And yeah.
It's when you said that, I was thinking, like, when someone says, well, you should be ashamed of yourself. I want to go, you don't know half of the stuff I've done.
Yeah.
But I can't let you go, David, without our rapid fire questions. So if you are ready, sir,
I think I'm ready. I don't know till I hear them.
you'll be great. What is your favorite recovery slogan?
Oh my gosh. I can't quote it perfectly because it's written kind of backwards, but contempt prior to investigation leaves one in everlasting ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
I love that because I was so contemptuous without investigation of the higher power, the God, contemptuous of AA without investigation. I love
Yeah,
that.
that's a good one. What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Mm. Oh man, I got one. Yeah. I don't think I like fake it till you make it. I understand that it has its place, but we also say it's an honest program. And when I'm hurting, the meetings I've been to since my girlfriend told me she's leaving, I have shared honestly about my hurt, my pain, and I don't want to fake it. I don't want to fake happiness, and I don't want to be uh, inauthentic. I want to be authentic.
Yeah,
I guess that fake it till you make it has some place, but generally, I prefer honesty.
I like it. What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
Mm. Well, it's got to be a higher power. It's got to be. I mean, I'll get a 15-year medallion on May 5th if I keep doing what I've been doing, and that's not me. As much as I love to drink, I couldn't be sober a day or a week or a month without a sufficient higher power to keep me that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Give this a try. Give it a try. Give it a try. Oh, and number two, I know you said one.
That's okay, Dave.
Stubborn. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be all right. You're going to be okay, David.
That's an important one. What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
I don't play music a lot. My girlfriend, soon to be ex-girlfriend, likes country music, and I've come to like some of her songs. But I don't think I put music on to lift my spirits.
Okay. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
God send me somebody today to be helpful to.
What step do you love the most?
Well, the 9th step is my personal favorite. Had the most impact on me. 10th step is close behind it. It's changed my life.
Yeah. What step do you love the least?
I can't answer that. I can't answer that. They're a package, and I love them all. They've performed a miracle in me. So it'd be like, which arm or leg do you want to cut off? I want to keep them all.
Fair enough, Dave. What is one of your favorite movies?
My favorite movie is Captain Ron. After my divorce, I lived on a boat for 10 years and collected boating movies. And Captain Ron is hilarious.
That's awesome.
It's probably 35 years old now, but
out of everything you said, that probably surprised me the most today.
Oh.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I've struggled with the concept of heaven. It's one of the things I've tried to embrace in my spirituality. And my present concept of heaven or life after death does not lend itself to that particular question. My present concept is from a rabbi in a book that's on the shelf, and I can't remember the name of the book, but the concept is that we're all chains in humanity. We're links in the chain of humanity, and that the good that we pass along, and the help and the kindness and love that we pass along never dies, and it's carried forward. And to the extent that we give up thinking about our own personal mortality and think more about the immortality of our species and the chain of humanity, to that extent, there's life after death.
That's a pretty cool answer. Well, I really appreciate you, Dave. I've enjoyed listening to your story, and I appreciate you sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And I know that there'll be listeners out there that'll get a lot out of your story. So thank you for sharing today.
Thank you, my friend.
A new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the "the." And I also appreciate if you like, subscribe, and share, because somebody needs to hear this powerful story today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience, strength, and hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to the Cup of Joe Show.